The truth is now undeniable. The so-called Islamic Republic is not the government of Iran. It is a hostile, occupying force that's hijacked our homeland. After invading 5 neighboring countries and sowing chaos across the region, this regime has invaded Iran itself, using foreign terrorists, Hezbollah fighters, Iraqi militias, and other mercenaries to slaughter the Iranian people. This is no longer mere repression. This is foreign occupation wearing clerical robes. Just as Saddam Hussein drowned the marshes in blood, and Bashar al-Assad turned barrel bombs on his own children, Ali Khamenei and his thugs have committed mass crimes against the Iranian people and against all of humanity. And just like those other tyrannies, the Islamic Republic will fall, not if, but when. The world must hear this clearly. The battle in Iran today is not between reform and revolution. It is between occupation and liberation. And the Iranian people have already chosen their side. Their heads are bloodied, but unbowed. Yet the cost has been heartbreaking. The people of Iran are being slaughtered in the streets and in their homes by a regime that shows no mercy. More than 12,000 Iranians were massacred in 48 hours. One murder every 14 seconds. Khamenei's killers even hunted the wounded protesters in hospitals and executed them in cold blood. The regime collected piles of bodies with dump trucks and forced worried families to search unlabeled body bags. They refused to return bodies for burial without payment for the cost of the bullets that killed their loved ones. And where a family cannot pay up to several thousand dollars, and most of them can't, they bury the dead in unmarked mass graves. And despite the lies you're hearing from the regime, its bloodlust has not diminished. The slaughter has not stopped. My brave compatriots, still holding the line with their broken bodies but unbreakable will, need your urgent help right now. Make no mistake, however, the Islamic Republic is close to collapse. Ali Khamenei and his thugs know this. That's why they are lashing out like a wounded animal, desperate to cling to power. The people have not retreated. Their determination has made one thing clear. They are not merely rejecting this regime, they are demanding a credible new path forward. They have called for me to lead. The bond between me and the Iranian people is not new. It's been with me since birth, and it cannot be broken. Even in exile, I pledged my life to the service of the Iranian nation. When Saddam Hussein invaded Iraq, I volunteered as a fighter pilot to defend my country against his invasion. Today, as my compatriots call on me for leadership, I reaffirm my lifelong pledge by stepping in to lead the movement that will take back our country from the anti-Iranian hostile force that occupies it and kills its children. I will return to Iran. I am uniquely positioned to ensure a stable transition. That's not my opinion. That's the verdict delivered loudly and clearly by the people in the face of bullets. Large sections of the army and security forces have already refused to participate in the killing of civilians. They have whispered their loyalty to me. Tens of thousands have already signaled their readiness to defect, and this process has been underway for months. What's clear is both the public and members of the military see me as a national figure who can unite all opposition forces from every background, ethnicity, Republican and monarchist, right, left, and everything in between. I have a comprehensive plan for an orderly transition which is ready to be implemented immediately. The Iranian people are taking decisive actions on the ground. It is now time for the international community to join them fully. Today, I ask the world to do 6 things. First, protect the Iranian people by degrading the regime's repressive capacity, including targeting the Islamic Revolutionary Guard leadership and its command and control infrastructure. Second, deliver and sustain maximum economic pressure on the regime, block their assets worldwide, target and dismantle their fleet of ghost tankers. Third, break through the regime's information blockade by enabling unrestricted internet access. Deploy Starlink and other secure communications tools widely across Iran, and conduct cyber operations to disable the regime's ability to shut down the internet. Fourth, hold the regime accountable by expelling its diplomats from your capitals and pursue legal enforcement actions against those responsible for crimes against humanity. Fifth, demand the immediate release of all political prisoners. Sixth, prepare for a democratic transition in Iran by committing to recognize a legitimate transitional government when the moment comes. Supporting the Iranian people is not an act of charity, nor is it unwarranted interference. Global stability itself depends on the removal of this regime. Its 47 years of exported terror, nuclear threats, and regional chaos must end. This does not require putting boots on the ground. The Iranian people's boots are already on the ground. They are the ones marching, sacrificing, and fighting for their freedom every single day. What they need from the world is resolute, targeted support to protect lives, amplify their voices, and hasten the collapse that is already underway. But let me be clear, with or without the world's help, the regime will fall. It will fall sooner, and more lives will be saved if the world turns its words into action. A free, democratic Iran will not be a source of endless crisis. It will be a pillar of peace, partnership, and prosperity for the Middle East and beyond. The choice is clear. Stand with the people now, or watch the cycle of instability continue. As I have said to my compatriots, the noble and courageous people of Iran, particularly the young generation, I speak directly to you. Know that you have commanded the world's attention and admiration. History itself stands in awe of your bravery and your sacrifices. You are the immortal guard of Iran. Continue the fight as you have done so far. Do not allow this regime to create the illusion that life is normal. After all the massacres, there is a sea of blood between us and the regime. The regime, through severe repression, killing, and cutting off communications, is trying to instill fear and terror in you and to make you despair of continuing the movement and struggle. But know that because of your steadfastness and fight, thousands of military and security forces have not gone to work so as not to participate in the repression. Save the name of all these criminals. They will be prosecuted for what they have done. Yet justice alone will not heal all the wounds, but it will open the door to healing and a national rebirth. As for the day after our victory, I have a clear plan for the transition to democracy. Millions of Iranians inside and outside Iran are united around these 4 core principles: Iran's territorial integrity, separation of religion and state, individual liberties and equality of all citizens, and the Iranian people's right to decide a democratic form of government. The end of the regime will mark the rebirth of one of the most accomplished civilizations in history for the future of Iran and its people. Iran is blessed with extraordinary human talent and vast natural resources. Our people are highly educated, producing one of the highest numbers of engineers in the world, with around 70% women. Today, the corrupt regime wastes these gifts. In a free Iran, our resources and ingenuity will drive prosperity at home and strengthen global supply chains, including America's. A free Iran will be a game changer for peace in the Middle East and for Iran's relations with the United States and the West. The Iranian people love America and hate this regime. After its collapse, instead of death to America, the world will find a nation that embraces America as a true friend. President Trump brokered the Abraham Accords, bringing peace between Arab nations and Israel. I see extending this idea to a free Iran through what we could call the Cyrus Accords, honoring our ancient heritage of tolerance and partnership. The possibilities are endless. There will be a peaceful, stable, and orderly transition. My team of experts have developed a plan for the first 100 days after the regime's collapse and the long-term reconstruction and stabilization of our country. It is backed by business leaders and provides a detailed roadmap for national recovery. Restoring economic confidence, ensuring that essential services continue uninterrupted, and laying the foundation for prosperity in a free Iran. A constitutional process will follow under international observation, allowing Iranians to finally determine their own destiny through free and fair elections. A free and democratic Iran that emerges will live at peace with our neighbors. It will be an engine of growth and opportunity in the region and the world. There are moments in history where the moral imperative for action is so strong that the weight of inaction becomes unbearable. This is one of those moments. The people of Iran have risen to reclaim their country. History will honor those who stand with them. Long live Iran. Thank you.
پیام شما چه چیزی برای گفتن در این لحظه به ایرانیانی دارید که در حال مقابله هستند؟
دیدیم که همیهنانمون با شهامت و شجاعت و با اتحاد و جمعیت میلیونی در خیابانها باعث عقب نشینی نظام شدند، به حالی که رژیم مجبور شد دست به سرکوب وحشتناکی بزنه و اون هم با استفاده از عوامل بیشتر خارجی تا عوامل خودش که خیلی حاضر نشدن برای سرکوب سر کار بروند. این نمونه و علامتی است از قدرت مردم و ضعف نظام. البته ما اکنون مواجه با شرایطی هستیم که نیاز به کمک هم داریم و برای همین هست که من به جامعه بین‌المللی هشدار میدهم که اگه بخواید جلوی جنایت بیشتری رو بگیرید، اگه بخواید جان کمتر افراد از بین برود و این حکومت زودتر سقوط کند به نفع آزاد شدن مردم ایران، بهتر است که سکوت را جایگزین عمل بکنید و فراتر از صحبت و سخن عملاً از این مردم حمایت بکنید که یک فرصت واقعی برای پیروزی نهایی داشته باشند.
Can you introduce yourself? Excuse me, sir. Can you just introduce yourself then?
It's also an undeniable truth that when your father ran the country, there were executions, there was torture, there was secret police. What would you say to Iranians today who are concerned that under your leadership they would be swapping one dictator for another?
First of all, I let historians write history. I'm here to make history, not to write it. Second, you hear the Iranian people standing behind me and calling my name. This doesn't occur incidentally. They have known my track record. They know my unwavering commitment to democracy and human rights. This has been my position the day I started and remains my position to this day. They know they can trust me because they've never seen me waver from this. And ultimately, what I'm trying to make sure is the final element that will prove to the Iranians that are in full control of their own destiny, is to turn power back to them, a power that has been taken away from them by this regime, which we are fighting today. That's my commitment, and they can trust me on that.
Bloomberg. No, I've called Bloomberg, please. Is a gentleman or lady from Bloomberg? No? They asked a question. No, Reuters, please. Oh, there's a microphone just coming.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Riley Johnson from Bloomberg. Are you having any further conversations with Witkoff or the Trump administration?
Look, these are sensitive times, and I'm not going to discuss details of who I'm meeting with and what has been discussed. What I can tell you, however, is that there is strong support for the Iranian people, and I believe that President Trump is a man of his word, and ultimately he will stand with the Iranian people as he has said.
Lady from DW.
Thank you very much. I'm with Deutsche Welle, Germany's international broadcaster. Thank you so much. I have two questions. We saw a slide there saying Donald Trump help. What exactly does this mean? What do you hope Donald Trump to do? And my second question is regarding Europe and especially Germany. What do you hope for Europe does to support your cause? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Well, clearly President Trump did say that if the regime was to hit the Iranian people hard, they would face with serious consequences. The Iranian people have taken his word as a man of his words, as I said. They know that unlike his predecessors that threw us under the bus one time, this president is not about to do the same thing. And that's very encouraging and empowering. Number two, you asked me about European countries. Look, we already are past the point of whether you should subscribe the IRGC as a terrorist organization or not. And frankly, I'm flabbergasted that there are still some countries that are not willing to take the next step, as if they are supposed to worry about how the regime would retaliate. This regime is on its last leg. It's about to collapse. And I think the world, especially the democratic free world, that champions freedom and human rights and equality of citizens, at the face of this regime brutal repression, should act now. I called for them to start acting as opposed to talking. We need your help. We need your action. We need to take all the steps that I've indicated in my opening remarks, all those 6 elements. Anything that can be done in that direction is a moral boost, and beyond moral boost, an actual act of support for a defenseless society and civilians that, as you can see, have been treated in the worst possible way. And the only hope they have is that their fight for freedom, their sacrifices, will be less loss of life based on your action to expedite this regime's collapse. That's what the Iranian people are expecting from you. And let me reiterate, as I said again, we're not waiting for you to act to continue our fight. We are. But imagine how much more we can protect more innocent lives from dying by acting and helping us today. These are critical moments that are game changers, not just for us Iranians, but for the whole world. This is what we need from you, so help us.
Reuters. Microphone over here, please.
Thank you. Humaira Pamuk from Reuters. In an interview a couple of days ago, President Trump actually expressed some doubts about your support inside Iran. How are you planning to win him over, convince him that you do have the support that you say you do? Also, you're talking about thousands of potential defectors, but the IRGC and other forces have hundreds of thousands. So how are you going to assert your control over this establishment? And are you, anytime soon, going to meet with President Trump? Are you making an active effort? Thank you.
President Trump has said that it's up to the Iranian people to decide, and I totally agree. I've always said it's for the Iranian people to decide. And I think the Iranian people have already demonstrated in great numbers who it is that they want them to lead to this transition. So I'm confident that I have the support of my compatriot, and it's for the international leaders to assess the fact on the grounds and see who is capable of doing that. I believe I can, and I have the Iranian people's support. And of course, if anybody in the world is willing to help the Iranian people achieve that goal, that's what I'm trying to do, to help them liberate themselves and attract as much support as I can internationally to be behind the Iranian people this time and on the right side of history. Now, as far as the defection goes, this campaign has started months ago. We started this, in fact, I announced it in another press conference I had in Paris a few months ago. Some of you might have heard about it, at which point we established a system whereby people who want to defect or want to access us or want to indicate their interest to join with us have a secure means of communicating their intentions to us. Since then, tens of thousands have applied. Many of them are from the security forces in Iran, police force, military, IRGC, and we are vetting them as we're speaking. And the mechanism for defection does exist, but most importantly is the principle of having an exit strategy. And on that I've said, anyone whose hand is not soiled in the blood of the Iranian people will survive regime change. We're not talking about de-Baathification. We're not talking about the disaster of post-Saddam Hussein, post-Gaddafi collapse. We're not going to have a failed state. And for me to be able to guide a smooth transition, I'm counting on security forces to be the element that keeps the country secure, protects people's lives and their livelihood, and be part of the solution. As a result, we have already seen people indicating their cooperation. We have already seen elements that refuse to be used as an instrument of repression, which is why the regime is now, as we speak, importing elements from outside the country to be the instrument of repression, as they're running out of their own forces to do that for them inside Iran. And all of this is the indication of the beginning of that collapse. Hopefully, by more support from the outside world, by a determined strike on the regime's elements that are the instrument of repression, as I stated in my opening remarks, in my opinion, that will expedite the process and will also increase the number of defections to be more rapid, so that we are not faced with remnants and pockets of resistance as much as possible. There's never going to be 100% defection, but there comes a point where the regime sees it's futile, and hopefully by then Khamenei will be joining Bashar in Moscow and will be rid of him.
This gentleman here.
So, good morning. Thank you. Ben Leo from GB News in London. In London, sir, in England, we have Iranian sleeper cells on their way to the Israeli embassy accused of trying to blow up the embassy. We have a former Iranian government minister living in North London, living in a council house, actually, who supported the fatwa on Salman Rushdie, praised Soleimani, so on and so on. Why is it in Britain's interests, and indeed the West, for this Islamic regime to fall, please?
Look, I'm sorry, could you repeat? I want to make sure I understood your question. Could you repeat it, please?
We have lots of Iranian sleeper cells and activity in London.
Right.
3 people were arrested trying to blow up the Israeli embassy. Some months ago, there's a former government minister living in North London who supported Soleimani, backs the fatwa on Rushdie. We have lots of Iranian activity in the UK connected with the regime here in Iran. Why is it in Britain's interests and the West's for this regime to fall?
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked the question because, in fact, one of the topics that I raised in some discussions I had the last time I was in London with former prime ministers was exactly to explain to them the mapping of every instrument that the regime is using under Khamenei's direct supervision through so-called centers through which they antagonize British citizens and, of course, many of those sleeper cells that you indicated. It doesn't stop in England, by the way. They are in America as well. So we're trying to explain to various governments the whole methodology that the regime is using with assets they have on the ground in respective countries, not to mention money laundering that goes on in many countries, including in Great Britain. So there are many ways that they can push back against that and protect not only the citizenry of whether it's Great Britain or America, but in what way it connects to why we need to do that ultimately, by putting an end to the regime. And one thing that is now becoming even more clear, and the fact that the regime could be threatening the world as a last gasp, we should not allow this regime to catch a second wind and be able to do further damage, which is why the strike is not just needed to help the Iranian people overcome this unfair disadvantage, but it's also one way to completely dismantle the regime's aspect of threatening and cut off the chain of income that it uses to fund all of these operations, including the sleeper cells, which is why I'm also calling for any means to cut off the lifeline to the regime, which is its revenue from whether it's oil exports or whatever other means of income that they have. We need to dry the well that funds terrorism once and for all against the Iranian people and the world.
So, hello. Dan Rivers from ITV News in the UK. 2 US aircraft carriers are heading, we understand, to the Gulf, and Donald Trump has said help is on its way, but they may take up to 10 days to get there, and meanwhile more and more people are dying. Are you losing faith in President Trump?
I believe the president is a man of his word, as I said before. How many days it might take, who knows? Hopefully sooner than later. But as I said before, regardless of whether action is taken or not, we as Iranians have no choice to carry on the fight. We're halfway across the river. There's no turning back. We will continue. The quicker the action happens, the more lives can be saved, and the sooner we can see the regime's collapse. So timing is, of course, important. And I would still believe in the president's commitment that help is on the way.
But does he need to do something today, tomorrow, to help your fellow countrymen who are dying?
I'm not the president's advisor. All I can say is that Iranians are, of course, right now as we speak, witnessing the kind of massacre that has been unprecedented in human history. And this is why the urgency becomes quite clear. The timing, I leave it to the experts to decide. All I can say is the sooner the better.
Okay, I'm going to call now Ben Amini from Manitou. Microphone over here, please.
Sorry, there's too much bright light. I can't see who is where. Okay, now I see you.
Thank you. Thank you. از نخستین من بهنام امینی هستم از تلویزیون منوتو. از نخستین روزهای انقلاب ملت ایران منوتو گزارش‌های متعددی از شهروندان دریافت کرد مبنی بر اینکه بخشی از نیروهای سرکوب در خیابان‌ها ایرانی نیستند. این موضوع گمانه‌زنی‌هایی درباره حضور شبه نظامیان خارجی به ویژه از عراق و لبنان را ایجاد کرده. موضوعی که امروز با گزارش رسانه‌های بین‌المللی درباره ورود دست کم 5000 نیروی مزدور از عراق برای سرکوب مردم ایران جدی‌تر شده. شما به عنوان رهبر انقلاب ملت ایران این گزارش‌ها رو چطور ارزیابی می‌کنید و حضور اونها نشانه چیست؟ سپاسگزارم.
ببین این دقیقاً علامتی است از ضعف نظام به مفهوم این که حتی عوامل خودی به اندازه کافی نداره برای سرکوب مردم و مجبور میشه از بیرون عوامل خارجی رو وارد بکنه. اگه این نظام امکاناتش رو داشت از نظر ایجاد رعب و ترس نیازی به وارد کردن عوامل خارجی نمی بود. این نشانه ضعفشونه و یأسشونه. البته توحششون مشهوده، چون میدونن که به آخرین طریق ممکن میخوان در مردم ایجاد تردید و ترس بکنن. فکر کنم مردم ایران بر این ترس غلبه کردن. اما وقتی که میبینیم این نظام دست به این کار میشه، اینجاست که جامعه بین‌المللی باید متوجه بشه که این نظام حتی حاضر عواملی از خارج بیاره بر سرکوب مردم خودش و تا این حد بقیه هست. به هر حال من فکر کنم که دنیا امروز تصمیم گرفته برای عکس‌العمل نشان دادن و به زودی شواهدش رو خواهیم دید. A quick translation for those of you who don't speak Farsi. The question related to the regimes importing foreign elements into Iran to use as a mechanism of repression. And I said that this is a clear indication of the regime's weakness, that it cannot even count on its own forces to do the dirty job, and it has to resort to bring people from the outside. But reason more for the world to realize that as this desperation act of the regime to try to brutalize its own people as a last gasp effort cannot be left unanswered, which is why we're calling for the world to help us out.
Thank you. AFP, please.
Thank you very much. Sean Tandon with AFP. Nice to see you. Could I follow up? The momentum, you mentioned that that's in the hands of Iranians, but at what point is it too late for the intervention that you're talking about from President Trump? Could there be the sense that he's talked for over 10 days about help is on the way? Is there a sense that that could actually weaken the momentum? And specifically, you said at the beginning that there should be targeting of the Revolutionary Guards. Do you mean necessarily military strikes? How should the Revolutionary Guards be targeted? Thanks.
Right. It's never too late. Any fight for freedom doesn't have a deadline. Some of you reporters have deadlines to make your reports, but this fight doesn't have deadline. We will fight until we win. That is the national will of the Iranian people. We are all going to fight until we win. The only question is, what are the elements that can expedite it? And the immediate issue remains, what will hurt the regime most? By dismantling its apparatus of state terror and repression. A lot of it are the regime's military, paramilitary assets, mostly IRGC targets. So I'm calling for a surgical strike on those means. And I think it should be quite obvious to any of you. How do you weaken the regime's first and foremost means of instituting terror at home or terrorism abroad? And all ties, the targets are quite obvious. You're not going to hit a factory or a school or a hospital. Clearly, it's obvious what the targets should be. And the regime knows it. And that's exactly what those who have to decide how to decide what should be the legitimate targets will decide upon it. I think the Iranian people naturally say the people who hurt us the most should be the first one to be targeted. And I think that it should be quite obvious what should be done, in my opinion.
CBS. CBS here. Newsmax.
Good morning, sir. President Trump, up to this point, as we know, has decided not to take military action up to this point. He recently said that the killing has stopped, the planned executions have been halted. Is it your belief that American intervention, specifically military intervention, is necessary for this current movement today to be successful?
As I said in my opening remarks, the Iranian people are defenseless on the streets, unarmed against a regime that is unleashing on them with military weapons, AK-47s, assault cars, trying to rip them apart. And these are the odds that are not fair for a nation that is trying to overcome a regime by means of protesting peacefully on the streets. So the only way you can equalize the playing field is to help them have a better chance by weakening the regime's apparatus of repression. and these are mostly paramilitary institutions such as the IRGC. IRGC has been the main instrument of the regime's repression at home and terror abroad. So clearly, any strike on those entities will facilitate our task, will prevent more loss of lives, and will weaken the regime to a point that resistance will be futile, and we will try to encourage the regime's top echelon to ultimately depart, and the rest of society will know the regime is now totally crumbling, and we are prepared to collect the rest of them that will then rally around the people and stand with them, and hopefully we can enter the phase of transition. This is pretty much the scenario I see unfolding, but right now the decision is in the process of being made. I'm not going to speculate where it is right now. I'm not going to go follow every headlines that the news says in any news cycle. There's a lot that is happening and it's unfolding, and I'd rather not speculate. All I say is that if action happens, great. If it doesn't, we will still fight. The difference is it will be longer, costlier to us as a nation, more loss of life. And if the world does care about Iranian loss of life, then they better act and equalize the playing field for us, so we'll have a better chance to succeed with less casualties and less deaths in the process.
Thank you. Robert Tate from The Guardian. Mr. Pahlavi, you have said you have a detailed plan to lead the transition when the regime falls. Does that include establishing a constitutional monarchy on the basis of the one your father was head of? Or do you foresee yourself as merely a transitional or temporary figure? And if so, how would that differ from the vow of Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979, who said at the time of the revolution that he would simply be a transitional figure who would return to home and would retire from active politics only to set up a repressive theocracy? I mean, can you give a pledge that you would not be a second Ayatollah Khomeini?
I invite all of you after this press conference, and I have some of our experts available to you to explain all of this process in more details. One of the projects that I started a few years ago is called IPP, Iran Prosperity Project. This project is meant to address all of the issues, beginning with the first 100 days of how to manage the transition and stabilize the country. Mid-term range, anywhere between 6 months to 2 years of the rest of the normalization phase, and ultimately Iran's development down the line. Many documents have been generated with the help of legal experts, economists, and others to explain the chronology of events. But in relationship to your question, the way we have proposed the process to go is that the minute the regime collapses, the transitional government takes control. It works towards working in a process where we have its own judiciary branch, executive branch, legislative branch, and temporary parliament to oversee the elections of ultimately a national assembly, by first allowing the Iranian people, after about 4 months' time and many other debates, what is the form they would like to have as a future system of governance by means of referendum. Whatever the majority of the Iranian people decide, their representative in a constitutional assembly will be tasked with the responsibility to draft the constitution of this next system and present that constitutional project to the nation. The nation will have the opportunity to either ratify that proposed constitution, or if not, send it back to that constitutional assembly to rewrite it whatever way is fitted, again submit it to a secondary referendum. If in the second referendum there's still no consensus in majority, that constitutional assembly would dissolve. A new constitutional assembly will be created, and the process will again occur until finally we have a ratified proposed constitutional project. Once that happens, the first parliament of this new democracy will be elected, and the first government of that new system will be elected. If it's a republic, the president will be elected. If it's a monarchy, the prime minister will be elected. At that time, the transitional government dissolves itself and passes over and hands over the responsibility and the authority to the newly elected government based on that new constitution. This is the process from beginning to end. My role in all this is to lead this transition, help with the transitional structure, bring in all the elements that check all the boxes, because the country has to function. Day one, somebody has to pick up the trash. The train has to run on time. Basic services have to be provided. And at this stage, what we are inviting to have the quickest, smoothest transition, the maximum participation, on the one hand, of the military and paramilitary forces to play their role, and the civil society and the bureaucracy to be also in place to be able to address these things. So the majority of these instruments are already in place. And again, against the model of de-Baathification, we count on the majority of these people to remain in their jobs. We want to make sure that the world can help us, so the transitional government can pay salaries so people can maintain their jobs and do all of that. All of these things have been studied and explained in details. And as I